So, good afternoon, everyone. We just learned we produce more than 1,800 million tons of steel globally. And there may be a steep challenge ahead. How do we fill this gap in future with, let's say, the secondary raw metals from recycled materials? Thank you for having me today here. And to share with you, let's say, our view on this question. But first of all, who are we? You may not have heard yet much about REON Group. I'm happy to introduce it to you now. We just launched a new umbrella brand, which is called REON Group. And we are a joint venture of Scholz Recycling Group from Germany and voestalpine here from Linz. And we merged 7 strong Austrian brands, Scholz Austria, Rohstoffhandel, Kuttin, Schrott Gebeshuber, Schrott Waldner, Eisenhandel Gebeshuber to REON Group. Some facts and figures, the numbers, they speak for itself. So here in REON Group, we produce roughly 1 million tons of, let's say, high-valued secondary raw material, supported by the remaining part of Scholz Group, up to 5 million tons. We have a workforce of 370 dedicated recycling experts here in REON. Total Scholz Group, 3,500. And we operate 7 scrapyards, let's say here in Austria, Czech Republic, and Hungary. So now let's jump right into the topic. Our take on the question, is there really a gap in quantities? I would like to start with you, let's say, with the big picture. So we currently see, let's say, a scrap trading globally with 630 million tons. This includes also, let's say, own scrap from steel mills and foundry scrap. Traded are, let's say, 450 million tons within countries globally. 90 million tons roughly beyond states, 26 million tons within the EU, and roughly 20 million tons of scrap are currently exported out of the EU. The consumption in the EU within the last years, in average, was around 85 million tons. And just recently, we saw a decline to only 75 million tons. Here in Austria, we consume approximately 2 million tons of scrap. Let's have a look. Where is the scrap going to which leaves the EU at the moment? So from this roughly 20 million tons I mentioned, roughly 50% leave the EU to Turkey. The rest goes to, let's say, India, Egypt, and Pakistan. And in terms of quality, it mostly concerns old and demolition scrap, but also shredded scrap qualities. So I want to elaborate a little bit more, let's say, on the scrap which leaves the European Union, because it also has a meaning for us as recycler, and especially for us as big players in the recycling sector, as we are also working, as also functioning as a kind of market maker. And what we saw the last 3 years is a decrease in consumption and production within the EU of, let's say, steel production. And we need the export at the moment as it's a pressure valve. When production and consumption goes down, we can market let's say, the volumes to other countries, and the market is functioning. There's no oversupply, no under demand. All right, now let's have a closer look to Austria as well, as we are here locally present. Here we see a quite balanced picture. So the same quantity we import, we also export. So on the one hand, we consume already quite a fraction of recycled materials, but we also export them. For sure, we export higher qualities than we import. No, the way around, we import higher qualities than we export. So we import a lot from Germany, export a lot to Italy, but also the way around. Now, what concerns us at the moment is what is the, let's say, outlook for the future, and where does the journey go to, and how do we prepare ourselves as recycler? So we see here different studies available. This is a, let's say, a forecast study from Boston Consulting Group from March this year. For sure, up to 2030, it shows a growing demand for scrap, also growing supply, and it shows a small gap of 20 million tons. The markets us concerns is for sure the European Union. Here we see a, let's say, demand forecast of 100 million tons and a supply forecast of 110 million tons. This was beginning of the year, March. Let's say we took the chance now for this presentation today, also to update our, let's say, internal view. From my previous speaker, we have seen growth rates only with 0.5%. We also, let's say, corrected our growth forecast to only 1%. And when we look into the future, for sure we see a growing demand due to increasing EAF production and for sure therefore also higher scrap demand. But we see it more growing to, let's say, 90 million tons in 2030 and 100 million tons in 2040. It's, as you can see, 10 million lower than what Boston Consulting Group forecasted beginning of the year, but also the growth rate was now recently reduced by Boston Consulting as well. Here in our forecast, we now assume that steel mills hopefully will use 100% of scrap, so it does not consider usage of HBI or DRI. Another, let's say, study we found from Cambridge is also forecast that the European Union will be able to support, let's say, the scrap the raw material demand with scrap here in our region. So this is our internal forecast now. We also see some, let's say, upside potentials, which we touched already in the morning when we have a look to, let's say, the steel use. As mentioned from the speaker before, the most is used in the, let's say, infrastructure and building sector, and the highest share for sure is also in the automotive sector with 12%. Both are sectors which have quite high recovery rate for recycling. And what was mentioned in the morning, when we have a look to the potential which will be provided, let's say, from urban mining, we now also did a kind of deeper dive into the end-of-life vehicle sector, where we learned that there may be, let's say, potential for kind of urban mining. As of now, we have registered cars, roughly 320 million in the EU. 10 million cars per year get deregistered. However, we have these so-called unknown whereabouts of roughly 3.4 million tons. This is covered by the end-of-life directive, which is, let's say, in place up to now. But in future, we also learned this morning there will be a new EU regulation coming 2027, and this will also touch on the field of, let's say, heavy-duty and commercial vehicles, and also tackle the problem with the unknown whereabouts. Out of this, let's say, two sectors, unknown whereabouts and heavy-duty vehicles, we approximate that in the European Union we may see a kind of urban mining potential from, let's say, 10 to 14 million tons for additional scrap in future, which also makes us quite confident that we can, at least in the EU, cover the quantity gap. We internally don't see an issue here. However, there may be a challenge in the scrap qualities. So let's have a closer look to this. So here you see already on the right-hand side the problem which concerns most of us here. It's the copper within the scrap, especially in the shredded scrap, and the allowed impurities. For sure, rebar allows much higher impurities. We learned from Sikon this morning that 0.45% in shredded scrap of impurities are seen today. And for sure it must be the target to bring this number down so that we can use the scrap also in other sectors, especially in automotive in best case. We call it the red problem. And the red problem for us, it is manageable with different technologies, also seen in the morning by Sikon. So we see there are already shredder separation technologies in place. They sort out copper with hand picking, magnetic reiteration sorting, and in future we will see more and more automatic sorting processes supported for sure by artificial intelligence and optical sensors and so on and so on. However, what you can see here is, let's say the less impurities you want, the higher the effort will be, and also, very important, the costs. So it is possible, but it will take a lot of effort to get the scrap clean. So how do we tackle this issue? Within our group, we are, let's say, mostly focusing on three steps. So we start very early. So we already pre-sort the material at its route of supply. Then, when the material comes into our yards, we start with a kind of, let's say, pre-sorting. And when we talk now about end-of-life vehicles, previously we put in the, let's say, depolluted car directly into the shredder. For sure, we took away the glass and the rims. But nowadays we take out, let's say, the cables, the engine, the motor, let's say, the steering, and also put away the plastic bumper as good as we can. And for sure, this will then also increase the shredder output. The less impurities you put in, the better the output will be. And for sure, step 3, we improve our sorting technologies with sensors, with artificial intelligence, all the, let's say, nice things we have seen in the morning. And we are really optimistic that we can achieve the upcycling targets. We did now first melting trials with voestalpine and Donauwitz, and only put in, let's say, secondary live scrap, so old scrap, no, let's say, down pollution with clean production scrap. And what you can see here, the copper target of 0.15%, at least in this trial runs we achieved. And even here in the trial runs with pre-sorted cars, we really have a very convincing result. And the other, let's say, alloys like molybdenum or nickel are not a problem at all at the moment. But not only the melting analysis is, let's say, convincing, we also, let's say, optimized the shape of the scrap. So our target was to get a spherical shredder scrap to increase the density. And this could also be achieved. So the standard shredder scrap has a density from 0.6 to 0.9%, and here we bring it up to, let's say, 1.97 as a target. So our key takeaways are: the quantity gap is not the issue. We for sure see no really clear forecast. There's high uncertainties, but we also see some upcycling potentials like ELVs, or let's say upcycling low quality scrap to high quality scrap. But there may be, let's say, a gap in qualities, but also this is manageable in our point of view. So REON and Scholz, we can provide you the qualities you need, tailor-made. However, it's a question: when will the steel mills need what kind of analysis, in which volume, in which year? And therefore, let's say, our call to action is now, let's align forces as early as possible to go this journey together and make here a convincing scrap quality at the right time, and for sure also with a cost-effective approach. So I think we can solve it, but we have to align our efforts as soon as possible. And then I'm really optimistic that we can feed also the, let's say, sustainable scrap production, steel production. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Fetzer, for answering the gap questions in regards to scrap quality and scrap quantity. We've received some questions from the audience. Maybe just pick one of them to answer it, whatever you like.
So the question, do you directly cooperate with steel producers? Yes, we do. In REON Group especially, as I mentioned, we are a joint venture with voestalpine. Here we have a very close collaboration. But as a call for the whole industry, definitely get in touch quite early to your recycler and align your efforts. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Fetzer.